there's all these stories about, guys over in Macedonia who are running these fake news sites.
Number 24 is Content Farms in Macedonia.
Бидејќи ако се направи грешка, таа ќе биде кобна. Нема враќање назад.
So Europe need to remain more sexy lady in the world. Ajde, majkata!
Господа ја чува Македонија и низините граѓани.
Zoran Zaev admits his government is on shifting sand and signals to the opposition VMRO-DPMNE that he might be willing to form a government of national unity. The opposition leader, Proeski, says no, while other officials from VMRO say there is no way they could join what is essentially a criminal enterprise. New polls do show VMRO in the lead, and Zaev himself admitted after he ran through a sham of a no-confidence vote, which he won barely, that his government would have fallen had Sasho Myakov actually fled the country 2 weeks ago. What's behind all of this, and now? In the meantime, vaccines from Russia, the Sputnik vaccine, arrived in Macedonia, and the Russian ambassador greeted the arrival of the vaccines at the airport speaking perfect Macedonian. Yes, of course, NATO stands shoulder to shoulder with Macedonia. We'll discuss all of this and more on this episode of the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast. I'm Jason Miko, coming to you from the foot of the Catalina Mountains in Oro Valley, Arizona, in glorious springtime weather.
And this is Cvetin waiting in line for the Russian vaccine in Skopje, Macedonia.
Well, and as I understand it, with the Russian vaccines, they're now shortly thereafter the Chinese vaccines will arrive.
And the Indian ones and the Zanzibari ones.
And the Indian, proving once again that, that both NATO and the European Union are reliable partners, to use a quote from the past, and standing shoulder to shoulder with you. They're happy to provide masks, which you can find while you can't walk more than 50 meters down the street and find a couple of masks just lying on the street there. So, we're over-masked. A long time ago, we were over-ventilated when they said we needed ventilators, and everybody produced ventilators, and then we found out that ventilators didn't really work. But we're over-masked. What you need is the vaccines, and the EU and certainly NATO. NATO hasn't said anything about vaccines. Why, I don't know. But anyway, yes, so the Russian vaccine, the Chinese vaccine, I forgot about the Indian vaccine. So
I think it's AstraZeneca, but Indian packaging or Indian flavor, curry flavored. But
I don't think you can say that. That's
it's a
politically
podcast.
incorrect.
We can do whatever. But actually, Balkan Insight is joining the podcasting game, so pretty sure soon enough there'll be fact-checking and banning podcasts from
why not?
unverified podcasters.
Well, speaking of banning and whatnot, I understand I had my sister and brother-in-law and nephew over the other night for dinner, and they've got Disney Plus, I guess. And so the Aristocrats and Dumbo have now been deplatformed. Why, I don't know. I haven't seen them since I was a child, but come on, man.
Yeah, I found a great
Joe Biden.
Office GIF. I don't think it was out there. I put it on my Twitter. It's like Michael is angry at Ryanair thing, and he bought him a Dr. Seuss book, and he's angrily throwing it out the window. It's a perfect moment.
Now, seriously, a friend of mine there in Skopje posted a picture of himself, and he had in his hand, in his home, The Cat in the Hat. And I know that the Dr. Seuss books are available somewhere at some of the bookstores there. You guys and everybody, here's a pro tip from the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast, guys. Go out and buy all of the Dr. Seuss books that you can find there in Macedonia, because, you can't do GameStop. That came and went, and you lost. You didn't get on that train, you lost. But Dr. Seuss books or, DVDs or maybe even VHS tapes there in Macedonia of Dumbo and the Aristocrats and all of these shows. Go and buy these now. You'll be able to sell them for a fortune on eBay.
No, we are great. We can download them pirate. Everybody knows that. I guess that in Macedonia we don't really do Netflix. And some do, but in principle you can just go on a torrent on a Bulgarian site or one of those
Yeah.
pirate websites, and you can just download anything you want. And yeah, we can definitely do like a hard disk full of soon to be banned edgy media like Dr. Seuss
Yeah.
and Disney movies, which are
That,
pretty-
or, you know what? Here's an idea. So, since we don't have any sponsors here, we need to kind of raise money. Maybe what we can do is we can go contract, under the table with one of the printing houses there in Macedonia, and actually, print banned Dr. Seuss books.
yeah, and smuggle them to the U.S.
sell
through
them.
Mexico.
Smuggle them into the.
You're close to the border, right?
I am. Yeah, we can just drive them across. No, yeah, they'll never be looking for Dr. Seuss books in the trunk.
Yeah.
They're looking for marijuana and other things.
We can do marijuana too.
No. We leave that to Zaev and his brother and others.
We have loads of that. We're really the
Oh.
stupidest times.
I'm glad we can laugh.
Well, I'm actually so controversial. I actually even took the ride in Disneyland on the Song of the South ride, like the Splash Mountain.
Oh, yeah.
I'm really controversial. Zippity
Shame on
da, zippity day.
All right, now you're really going to get us banned. So, and you're going to break into that's what Uncle Remus said. So
I had no idea it's controversial at the time, honestly. Like almost 10 years
well,
ago.
and honestly, you shouldn't be. You're from that country, far away from here, and you get a pass for not knowing that.
Yeah.
But now you do. So. Oh, this is funny. We didn't intend to talk about this, but this is kind of the way it started, and that's fine. But going back to Macedonia and what's going on there, other than the need to go out and find Dr. Seuss books and buy them which is your retirement plan. So Zoran Zaev is doing all kinds of weird things. So he held this no confidence vote, and he kind of ran it through as a bit of a sham, and 62 votes, okay, which is what he's got, even though there's lots of the little parties saying that they're withdrawing from the citizen-led bloc in Parliament, and then there's this issue of can he hold another no confidence vote? You can't hold another one within 90 days or whatever, and there's various issues around that. But then after that, and supposedly he did this so he could buy himself time, because after the Sasha Mialkov scandal, and these parties coming out and saying that they weren't going to be a part of his, coalition anymore in a certain way. Then he goes and says, yes, let's have a government of national unity. And Hristijan Mikoski, the leader of VMRO-DPMNE, who's in the hospital right now, we wish him well. He's battling COVID, and we wish him and his family well. Hope he gets out of there soon. He said no. Other VMRO officials said no. So, as I mentioned in the monologue, what's behind all of this right now? What's going on? What can you tell
Yeah,
our
it was
audience?
weird after we recorded the last podcast. A bunch of things happened. So yeah, Zaev was being gnawed at. His coalition was being gnawed at by VMRO, who said that they are discussing with all of his coalition partners, like Besa, 4 votes, Dui, 2 members of parliament who are restless, the several Macedonian parties like Dom, LDP, and Democratic Soyuz, Pavel Trajanov, who combined have like 6 votes, I think. Maybe even some SDSM people, because, Zaev had this trouble with, because of his Bulgarian policy, he had this open rebellion from the Branko-Crvenkovsky wing of the party, which, should have been a significant thing for him. It was significant enough for him to stop much of what he was announcing, telegraphing he would do with regard to Bulgaria. So yeah, it was looking bad for a while, and especially with Mialkov's escape, it looked horrible for a few days for Zaev. But then after Mialkov returned, Mickovsky went to the hospital, while the party was announcing we are close to 61 votes, 62 votes, we're working towards 65, etc., to bring down Zaev. And then Zaev held a completely unannounced, practically, it was announced, and then an hour later the vote happened. It was such a
Wow.
rush thing in the parliament. He himself asked the parliament to vote a vote of confidence in him, and he won the same number of votes he had when he formed the government in, July? 62 votes out of 120. So practically all of these people we mentioned who were allegedly negotiating with VMRO, planning to split the party, leaving Zaev's group in parliament, they were, in a sense, it turned out, it looked as if they were just building up their price in Zaev's coalition, extorting money or offices from him just to, by criticizing him, leaving his group and announcing they're on the market for a coalition with VMRO as well. So at the moment, SDSM were triumphant, we got Myalkov back, and now we proved that Mickovsky is a liar, he does not have 62, 65 or anything like that votes. And immediately the Myalkov wing, now Myalkov-less wing of the Myriad coalition, now focused around Nikola Todorov, the former education minister under Gruevski.
Yes. Health minister.
Yeah, and education and everything. He was an important figure, practically number 3 or 4 in the government. So he is now saying, look at Mickovsky, he promised he has the votes, but turns out that Zaev has the votes. He did nothing, he wasted all his time in opposition, blah, 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 and, remove Mickovsky. I want to be leader of the party. He doesn't say this, but it's strongly implied. And yeah, it looked bad for a few days for VMRO, and then Zaev goes on television and says, okay, now I want to offer VMRO to join me in a grand coalition. And now, people are, okay, what's the deal now? You just had your government voted in with the same thin, narrow mandate you had before, but still, you were triumphant several days ago, and now you want a grand coalition, you want to sideline Dewey, you want to split, he's talking about the German model of having the two main parties in power, in perpetuity, so whoever wins the elections gets to be prime minister, but the second party also gets, a huge share of the spoils. So combining both the left and the right in Macedonia and the Albanians together in a big, huge mess of a government, and something is up. He's either having huge trouble with impending bankruptcy or Bulgarian demands, for which he wants a greater mandate to implement, which he obviously doesn't have at this point. Or the other thing is he's dangling a carrot of participation in the government for VMRO people. But if VMRO really has somebody from the Myriad wing, from the Myalkov wing, like Nikola Todorov, back in charge of the party. Now, the message would be, okay, you remove Mickovsky, and he'll said this afterwards in, Zaev, whenever he makes a statement, you need to clarify it and explain it afterwards. He has people to explain what he wanted to say, and this time was no difference. People came out and said he meant to say without Mickovsky in the government, or, actually without Mickovsky in the party. So, you have Nikola Todorov as leader of the party, have somebody from who I find acceptable, who is with Myalkov, who is working with me practically, with SDSM, to lead the party, and I will give you a share of the spoils.
Mm. Wow. Well, and then I know the other thing is that you've mentioned in the past, I think, and we've talked about this in the podcast in the past, that maybe this is what Kale wants. The Americans want to force VMRO's hand into, if VMRO were in a government of national unity, who in their right mind in VMRO is going to say the N-word and use the N-word and write the N-word and stand under a banner with the N-word? And now we're talking about Macedonian politics, not American politics.
Yeah.
So nobody is going to do that and survive as a VMRO leader. So, and maybe that's part of this as well. So, and actually, I've got another column coming up that I'm working on about undoing the damage that Zaev has done during his time in office, and that is something that VMRO needs to be thinking about and planning for right now, because you mentioned the example of the Germans and said they're in power in perpetuity forever, but of course nothing lasts forever, and certainly of all things, political power doesn't last forever, even in Germany, and it's Zaev is not going to be in power forever, and at some point he's going to be out, and his coalition partners are going to be out, and the opposition is going to be back in. That's just a fact. Now, it may take a long time. It may be a short time. I don't know. But at that point, then VMRO will take over and needs to undo the damage which has been done. And so that's why I don't think they could possibly go into a government of national unity right now. And as you said, there's all kinds of things behind this. You mentioned the other factions within the party that want to take over. And what does VMRO stand for? Maybe this is, I'm just thinking out loud right now, but maybe this is something that they need to reintroduce publicly. VMRO, in my mind, having as a friend of Macedonia and having been involved in Macedonia now for a quarter of a century, to my mind, VMRO is the inheritor and the guarantor of freedom for Macedonia and the Macedonians as a sovereign state of the Macedonian people. And you can't be a party that advocates that and is the guarantor and the inheritor of that if you are giving in and selling Macedonia's soul to your neighbors or to international post-Western progressives, etc. So that's why, I think I sent you an email the other day talking about this before, as we were planning for this podcast, and I said I smell a rat.
Yeah.
So anyway, I guess we'll just have to kind of wait and see on this. We touched on Bulgaria. I know their elections are coming up at the beginning. Now, their elections are the beginning of April, I think.
Yeah.
They just started the election campaign there. And I saw an interesting article on, I think it was Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, which is neither free nor about liberty.
Yeah.
It's a waste of taxpayers' money, but this one was more factual than opinionated, and talked about how a number of U.S. senators have said that the relationship, at least between the United States and Bulgaria, is kind of on rocky ground because there's so much corruption in Bulgaria right now, and how it's at the bottom of all the polls of NATO and EU countries in terms of freedom and freedom of the press and rule of law and judiciary and high on corruption and things like that. And yet it's Bulgaria that is dictating so much right now of Zaev's actions. So on that, have we heard anything more? Are we kind of in a holding pattern right now until those elections vis-a-vis Tweedledee and Tweedledum, Vlado Buchkovsky and Lupcho Georgievsky?
Yeah, this was interesting, as you said, with the senators. It smells an awful lot like a colored revolution being prepared in Bulgaria as well. The Menendez, this horrible, corrupt idiot who...
U.S. Senator from New Jersey. So.
Yeah, for Greece, essentially, and the Dominican Republic. The other guy, Rish, what's his name? They said...
James, yeah.
The Republican.
Idaho, I think?
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, he's actually, I don't know much about him, but he is a bit of an idiot because he refers to Macedonians as North Macedonians in his tweets and his statements, and somebody needs to get him and slap him upside the head.
Yeah, deep state, I suppose. It was very, they're talking about the ongoing protest in Bulgaria, which actually ended like months ago. They're using the same rhetoric against Borisov as they used against Gruevski. At the same time, you have Serbia, where it was yesterday, I think, Aleksandar Vučić, the president, he had a press conference. They busted some gang of, violent extortionists, mafia people, very, very cruel, apparently. And in relation with them, I suppose, they're also talking about having intercepted a huge ring of which was perpetrating wiretapping in the country of the president, of leaders. So we have both in Serbia and Bulgaria, we have developments which look very much like the attack on Gruevski, as well as, the openly announced pressure from the EU and the US for toppling Orban with protests and forming a grand coalition there of everybody, the left and the far right, against him. So yeah, I mean, it's clear that all conservative governments in the region, Slovenia as well, Poland, of course, they're all being targeted by, in a very similar fashion to what Gruevski was exposed to, and maybe the 4 years of Trump were just like a brief interlude, and now the deep state, whatever we want to call it, is back to its old tricks, and Bulgaria will definitely be part of this, be subjected to this, and they're calling them corrupt and lack of media freedom, which is all good. I mean, all true. You
All
could
true.
find examples of this, but this again, I've grown so skeptical of this foreign interference in the country. Even see Bulgarians begin to wisen up and realize, listen, this is going to end with a red-green coalition, a coalition of the left and the Turkish party, and they're looking at us. They sometimes with glee, but oftentimes, they realize this is what's going to happen to us if we're not careful. Looking at the left Albanian coalition in Macedonia, and they realize, okay, we can't have this. Americans installing a red-green coalition in Bulgaria. So, I mean, it's difficult. We're entering a very difficult phase with Biden now in charge.
Yeah, that's true. And if we take a step back and look at it from a 30,000-foot, 10,000-meter perspective, ultimately, and again, we're conservatives. This is a conservative podcast. This is episode 105, I think, by the way. Ultimately, these I like to call them the post-American progressives, post-Western progressives. This is Davos man and Davos woman that have their own agenda of global governance or global government, however you want to describe it, that basically reject any idea of what we would describe as true liberty and true freedom and true sovereignty, and basically want to set up a new world order of type that benefits them and their cronies, which is very, it's as old as humankind. It's just a different form of government with somebody's going to be on top, and it's just a different form of government with them on top. But it's antithetical to freedom and liberty and what we consider small d democracy or classical liberalism, small c, small l. And so that's the real danger in all of this, I think. But and this puts Macedonia in a very difficult place, because Macedonians are suffering at the hands of the Zaev government. First and foremost, the name is one thing, and as I've said and written many times before, I think that the issue of the name for most Macedonians doesn't register very high, for the simple reason that most Macedonians do not write, say, use, or see the N-word in their daily lives, and they're more interested in putting food on the table and getting their kids clothed and educated and taking a vacation, once or twice a year. And the Zaev government has been disastrous for those things on all fronts, and that's why but a center-right government, I believe, in the model of VMRO-DPMNE, especially under Gruevski, would be able to supply a government that focuses on things like the economy and creating wealth and creating jobs and bringing in foreign direct investment and providing a good education and healthcare and infrastructure, all of these things that most Macedonians are concerned with on a daily basis. This is what they think about when they get up in the morning and when they go to bed at night. They're not thinking so much about these not ephemeral existential challenges, I should say, from Greece and Bulgaria and the post-American progressives, the post-Western progressives and things like that. They just want to They just want to be able to put food on the table and take care of their kids. But that's the challenge that we all face, and specifically that Macedonia faces, kind of a double whammy of those basic issues I talked about, but then also trying to maintain or retain or regain, actually, Macedonia's name and identity and everything else. But switching slightly to another practical issue, the vaccines, as Zoran Zaev calls them in the English language, the vaccines. So Vucic delivered which one the other week? 800 doses or something?
8,000 Pfizer's, 8,000 in total.
Oh, Pfizer. Okay, so that was the first.
Yeah.
Now you've got Sputnik coming in.
Yep.
Then you've got the Chinese one. I can't remember the name of it. Coming. Well, we don't know when it's coming. We know it's coming, but we don't know when it's coming. Correct? Yeah.
Yeah. Today we got the first commercial batch from Russia, 3,000 Sputniks, bought and paid for. And again, it's it's a huge disaster for the government because at one point, I think in January, the Russian embassy, they had a diplomat out on television who was asked, listen, were you in contact? Were you asked, can you offer this? Obviously, the Western-produced stuff is not coming. And they said, we asked, we offered, and the government did not get back to us. So it's becoming clear that we could have had the Russian stuff much sooner. And due to, sensibilities in the country, people trust the Russian vaccine. I mean, if you just do an anecdotal survey of people, they would tell you, if I had to choose of all the 4 or 5 types, I would take the Russian. Mm-hmm. They have a good reputation here in technology and science and stuff. And now finally 3,000 doses came. It's not much. And obviously if Zaev had ordered more on time, there would have been much more by now in the country, and we could have had at least the doctors vaccinated because, the numbers are creeping up,
Right.
Especially in Kavadarci, in Prilep, and in Skopje. And then the Chinese stuff, it should be a big shipment. Zaev said 200,000 doses were ordered. He kept talking about it's going to come after the Chinese New Year, which was mid-February. People were joking about whether it's the epiphany of Buddha or we have to wait until, the apparition of Buddha or something like that. And who knows when they come, but, you know how the Chinese do everything wholesale. So I suppose when they come, it's going to be a bigger batch and maybe more Russian stuff comes. And this is still just token doses, 8,000, 3,000. That's enough for, 5,500 people.
Right.
But it's a complete, utter failure on their part, and it's even more satisfactory that, after all this talk about NATO, humiliating the country to join the EU, actually campaigning for the referendum with billboards saying, if you vote yes, we join the EU, and then you get free healthcare treatment across Europe and the best vaccines Europe can offer. This was literally, actually, a billboard on the side of the road, which caused controversy even then, let alone now. After all this humiliation, they have to turn to the Russians who Zaev accused of plotting against him, organizing a coup against him, bribing football fans to protest against him. This was in his BuzzFeed interview. He literally said all of this. So it's he called the Chinese cheats because of the highways they were building with Gruevski, who had an extensive relationship with them. Since the EU was not giving us money for infrastructure, Gruevski turned to the Chinese, and then Zaev stopped these projects, prosecuted Gruevski over them, then eventually signed the contract for much more money because the Chinese apparently made some mistake in the planning of the highway. So he decided to cavalierly pay them twice as much for the same highway to fix it. It's instead of telling them get off, we'll have somebody else finish it. You're so horrible at doing infrastructure. The Chinese can't do infrastructure. My God. So he humiliated them big time, both the Russians and the Chinese and the Serbs. And now he has to, lick his own vomit, which is really satisfactory. We use it as a term, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and we know that there's, of course, big power politics going on in all this. The Russians are more than happy to do the photo op at the airport with the Russian ambassador speaking perfect Macedonian as the Russia delivers its vaccines. The Chinese would be the same way. It seems the Westerners, the post-Westerners, I suppose, aren't so keen on any of this. NATO has been nowhere on all this. It's not necessarily their role to provide vaccines, but you would wonder why they wouldn't have been more into that. When the vaccine started becoming available in December and things of that nature. And then, of course, going back to the referendum in 2018, every article I read, it seems, and I just read one this week, I can't remember where it was, that said, talking about the referendum on the name change, it said that the Russians were leading the disinformation campaign and the boycott campaign, which is absolutely false. The boycott campaign was homegrown, and disinformation, I mean, here's one of the things that I remember from the article is that they claimed it was disinformation, as Macedonians were saying, if we change the name, we give up our identity. Well, actually, no, that's true. And we see that daily. I keep almost now for 3 years a list of major media. I'm talking the Associated Press, the Washington Post, Reuters, probably a New York Times article, things of this nature, where they use the N-word and they say North Macedonians, North Macedonian people, North Macedonian currency, North Macedonian electorals. Everything is North Macedonian, this, that, and the other. That changes fundamentally the identity. So it wasn't misinformation to say that. It actually is true. And then, of course, we have the Bulgarians saying, well, yeah, your identity really is as Bulgarians, and you're going to have to admit that, otherwise you'll never join the EU. So where was I going with this? This is, I know. I start going on my rants and rabbit holes and things of that nature, but it is absolutely true that changing the name changes the identity, as we are demonstrating right here, right now. Yeah. So, and to think we're just talking about this now based on the vaccines. Anyway,
all connected, actually.
Yeah, true, it is. And I know we got the census coming up here, and we don't have that on our list of things, but let's just say that there's 1.6 million people in Macedonia, actually. As opposed to the 2.1 or so that we've all been using and the CIA uses, etc., for their fact sheets. 1.6 million would be 3.2 million doses, and we're talking 8,000 here, 5,000 there.
Yeah.
I mean, this is going to take, it'll be 2030 before everybody gets vaccinated at that rate. It's just, the government is bumbling and incompetent, and as you mentioned, Zaev has been absolutely insulting of the Russians and the Chinese, and bending over backwards for the post-Western progressives, and yet they do nothing for him. It's just one big cluster, what. So, or as Jonah Goldberg likes to say, it's a fecal festival. So, maybe that's the title of this.
Yeah. I was just retweeting some old fact checkers, this Vistinomer, Trufometer, this Soros/USAID funded leftist organization here. They run the Facebook fact checking and everything. And I was just retweeting their articles how unsafe the Russian vaccine is. Like a month ago or like 3 weeks ago, they were saying it's not certified by the EU. Macedonian media are lying. We're fact checking and they're lying that the vaccine has been approved in Germany and blah, blah, blah. Because I think Mitskovsky at one point started saying, okay, get the Russian vaccine. Right. What are you doing? I mean, are you crazy? And now they were just like weeks ago and a month ago saying that it's unsafe, and now they have to endure the sight of their leader Zaev thanking the Russian ambassador for parachuting in and saving him from utter humiliation.
Oh, and as you mentioned, it looks like cases are going up, deaths maybe creeping up a little bit. So you've got this, rush to get the vaccines, and then the government is thinking about more lockdowns again, and we all know what Macedonia went through this past year with the lockdowns. Here we are in March. We're recording this on March the 7th, Sunday, so this will drop tomorrow, March 8th. But basically, a year. I mean, I remember clearly 1 year ago, it was March 11. It was a Wednesday when 3 things happened that day. Donald Trump gave his disastrous press conference about the whole thing and said it would go away. Tom Hanks and his wife were in Australia, and they said they tested positive, and the NBA canceled its season. And then I remember 2 days later, it was Friday the 13th, driving, I had dinner with friends across the street, and I had to run out to the grocery store to get some things, and I knew immediately what was going on because I've seen it before, actually in Macedonia, of shopping carts strewn about the parking lot because nobody was bothering to pick them up, because once you went inside, there were long lines, there was no toilet paper, panic was setting in. And that was on Friday the 13th of last year. So here we are 1 year later. We all know the lockdowns, what everybody's had to endure, and the government there of Macedonia is talking about more lockdowns, even as it's being incompetent in getting the vaccines. And then, of course, what does all this mean going forward? Here we are in March, 2 months from now, people are thinking about summer vacations and whatnot. Is Greece going to be open? Which is a traditional playground for Macedonians in the summer. I don't think most Macedonians didn't get down there last year. I think they were closed. Other destinations, Croatia is another one, even Albania.
No, I'm not going there again. That was the beach of last resort last year, but
beach of last resort and no more.
No, never again.
Yeah, and of course Greece being part of the European Union, they say that they coordinate, and whatnot, but that's not necessarily true. I have no idea if the EU countries are going to be open again. And then they're talking about the International Airline Transport Association is talking about this digital passport. Once you get vaccinated, working with various governments around the world. But then there's questions about whether or not that will discriminate against obviously people who have less money, less resources, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway.
People will go hungry here just to get the vaccine or the test and get to Greece. The big story right now is some folks actually went to Zanzibar. Apparently, they don't ask for coronavirus test if you go to East Africa, and a few of them came back with the virus. So now the big story here is find everybody who's been to Zanzibar, round them up and quarantine them.
Wow. I would never even have thought of going to Zanzibar. I mean, I would think that there's places a little closer with beaches that one could get to. Zanzibar is a fair bit of traveling to get to.
And God knows what else you can bring from there. the Ebolas and the more usual tropical diseases.
That's true. Yeah. Anyway.
But yeah, I mean, we would go to lengths to get to a beach. So don't underestimate the craziness of our kind here.
Yeah, exactly. So.
And listen, I mean, the others in Europe, I think most of Europe is open. So you're locked in a continent of 500,000 people. We are really locked in here. I mean, this is really becoming depressing. I've only been to Albania once and Bulgaria a couple of times since this started, and it's a problem. It's not okay. I mean, and even that requires Albanians let us in without the test, but once is enough, honestly, for a lifetime. And Bulgarians require the test. I think Serbia. I think we can go to Serbia now. Actually, yeah, I should look into.
Do they have a beach?
Not. They lost most of those.
Yeah, exactly. So, what about Montenegro?
Maybe along the Danube. I think they're closed.
Oh, okay.
And besides, you need to drive either through Kosovo, and then you can also get a whole bunch of other unwanted side effects of that. And it's mountainous. It's very difficult. I've actually taken the train to Montenegro to avoid driving there, and it was just like a month after I did that, there was a horrible train accident. It plunged into a ravine. It's horrible. I mean, getting to Montenegro is not easy from here.
Right. Yeah. It's been years since I've been. It's been, I think the last time I was in Montenegro was 2006 or 2007. Mm. Beautiful place.
Yeah.
Beautiful country.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. All right. Well, those are the issues we had talked about covering, and I have a farmer's pick.
Oh.
Yes, I really want to get into the habit. We got out of the habit there, Cvetin, of not having our farmer's picks. And as we...
But it was so depressing for a while. Nothing good happening.
Look, this is not Commentary Magazine with crushing morosity all around all the time. So we've got to have a little bit of good news. And I've been seeing more good. Actually, I've got a list of farmers picks for the next couple of podcasts because we want to dole these out judiciously and one by one. Steady the drip of good news. At the end of the podcast. So this one is from. So it's the North Central College, which is in Naperville, Illinois. Don't know anything about it, but it's their website, and it's an article on there, and it is the top 5 most beautiful places to visit in Macedonia. So Maria Hristovska, I don't know what her relationship. Oh, she's an international student there, or in Macedonia, and somehow affiliated with the college. But the top 5 most beautiful places to visit in Macedonia. Obviously, as a Macedonian, she doesn't use the N-word. And she explains where Macedonia is, why she's writing about it. She's from Bitola. So she says, why my hometown of Bitola is worth visiting. She talks about Matka Canyon, Mavrovo, Krushevo, and of course, Ohrid. Sorry, she didn't mention Skopje.
No, she's absolutely correct. Listen to Maria. Well, okay, Matka is in Skopje. You have to
true.
Get to Skopje to go there. But there is this old song that Bitola is so nice. We would give up Solun and Istanbul just to keep Bitola, and unfortunately it came true. So.
Oh dear.
That song really jinxed us.
Yeah. Goodness. All right. Well, that's our farmer's pick. The top 5 most beautiful places to visit in Macedonia. If you guys are still locked in and can't get out to Greece this summer or other places, we of course encourage staycations in Macedonia, in and around Macedonia. That's the top 5, but there's plenty of other beautiful places to visit in Macedonia, Cvetin, like Kratovo. Which I would encourage you to visit at some point.
I'm planning. I'm working on it.
Good. Anyway, that's our farmer's pick, and good podcast. I like it how we can laugh a lot, despite all of the crushing morosity going on.
Well, we've gone through all the 5 stages of grief, and I guess
the last one was just being silly.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, that's a wrap.
Dark humor sustained us through the Balkan Wars, actually.
That's true. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So. Good.
Well,
good podcast.
We'll see what next week brings.
Sounds good.
Take care, everybody.
You too. Bye.
Ako odam Bitola, che naracciam do tripajto.